Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Thought Leadership Podcast and live show where we interview thought leaders, experts, amazing entrepreneurs, visionary leaders. And today I have the honor to have with me Kristina Mänd-Lakhiani, who is the co-founder of Mindvalley, but also she's a speaker, entrepreneur. She loves, being an everyday life philosopher. If you follow her on Instagram, you can discover her stories. She writes beautiful, beautiful sharings, and she's also an philanthropist. So Kristina, welcome to the show. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me and for inviting me.
Oh,
It's a pleasure to be a guest on the show for a change.
oh yeah. You also have you interview a lot of interesting people as well. I guess yes, amazing. So the reason I wanted to have you on the show is because you have grown, in so many different ways. You are, a speaker, you're a mother, you're a philosopher, you are an entrepreneur, you run co-run Mindvalley. And I would love to talk about being bold and going for, living your life on your own terms, because for everyone reading your, Instagram or your stories, we
Mhm.
discovered the world of you and you're very authentic in what you're sharing. But I would love to go back and talk a bit more about Kristina. Let's say a couple of years ago. Do you remember when you went on this journey? Do you remember a moment when you kind of decided that I'm going to live my life on my own terms?
Mhm. You know, as you were asking this question, I was moving back in my life, and my first thought was that, of course, since I have my own business, it's kind of easy to live by my own rules. Because even when my children were born, it was up to me to decide if I want to go back to the office, and if I want to bring my children to the office and change one room into a nursing room. But then I started thinking back. I'm sorry, I'm going to shift a little bit because the sun is so unexpectedly bright in Estonia. I hope you don't
No
mind this.
worries. It's a good sign. It's amazing. Yeah.
It doesn't happen in my country.
Yeah.
So I'm taken by surprise. Oh my God, we have sun. So
Yes.
yeah, I was thinking back, but then I realized that even when I went to my first job,
Yeah.
and my first job was, and I was still in the university, and I wasn't just in university, I was actually very active in a student organization. And I remember how I came to my employer of that time, fresh out of school, out of university, not yet out even. And I said that, yeah, I'd like to work for you guys because I need money, but I have my conditions because I'm traveling a lot, we have events, I'm going to take, like, I don't care if you insist that I travel on my own expense, but that's what I'm going to do. So I suddenly realized that this desire to do as I choose has always been there. I
Mm.
guess my journey was a little easier because I came from a fairly liberal background. My family is easy. My parents were easy with me because they were also in a way rebels, but they lived differently from their parents. They
Mm.
moved to different places. So I guess I didn't have that aspect of having to actually break down the shackles of the society, of the peers, or anything like that. But my journey was more about me living in integrity with my own values, and that is a little bit more complicated. So my journey to myself had more to do with my relationships with myself than with my relationships with the outside world, and I'll try to explain why. I'm a perfectionist. I'm the only child of my parents. So, because I'm the only child of my parents, I had to do everything right because I can't mess up. There is no other sibling to to be the good sibling. So, all the hopes of both, both families, as my dad's and my mom's families, for me. And I'm saying it with a joke, of course, but being a perfectionist and being ambitious, of course, I had an idea of what it meant to be a successful person. So my coming out process, coming out with my own truth, had more to do with me actually calling myself out on my bullshit.
Mm.
Because that's the interesting thing about delusion, is that we are not aware that we are lying to ourselves. We
Yeah.
always have so many beautiful stories why we do what we do. So my story was, but I have to be successful. I have to be perfect. I have to do everything right.
Mm.
And and society also dictates what it is to be perfect, what to be successful, and without even questioning, you just go full steam on towards you think is right, and then you suddenly realize that that doesn't make you happy.
Yeah.
And then when you start asking yourself, so why is it that you reach the goal that you've been thinking about, that you've accomplished the success that you've been dreaming about, you're on the pinnacle, you're on the Olymp, you suddenly feel that you're not content, that you're not happy, that it didn't give you what you thought you would be having at that time. And that's what my journey was about, just being honest with myself and saying I was chasing the wrong goals. That
Yeah.
wasn't about me.
Yeah, yeah. And you mentioned something that I can relate to a lot is about learning to understand that everything is negotiable. You know, even when you came to the employer in the first time, you're saying, those are my values and this is what how I want it to be. And actually I can relate that to my mentor I met when I was 17 that I worked for. The only company I ever worked for 4 years was a family business, and they were small business owners, and they taught me this philosophy that everything is negotiable, everything. So if you have, if someone comes as a business owner, they don't have all the answers. So if you come and you can back up why you need your holidays or you want to travel with the van, and you show up in your work, there is no reason I will say no. And I love that you mentioned that, because for me that came from my mentor. It didn't come naturally from my education because I'm the only entrepreneur in my family. But you mentioned also your parents. Do you remember that if you had because it's about cultivating those values and cultivating that philosophy that everything is negotiable, everything can be have a conversation, and everything is it can be readapted and recreated together, because that's what you basically came in and did. Do you remember any people guidance that you had growing up? You mentioned your parents, but did you have any mentors, any role models, or someone that you followed that inspired you to go for that?
That's an interesting question. I was brought up in Soviet Union, so my early role models were not the kind of people I would admire right now.
Yeah.
So you can even say I was brainwashed.
Yeah.
But of course, I admire people, but I've never. People often ask who is the celebrity or who's the accomplished person or historical figure you'd like to meet, and I'm always puzzled with that question. I don't know, but
Yeah.
almost every person that I meet, I'm trying to see what I can admire in that person,
Yeah.
especially that I interview so many people. So I'm in the habit of looking for something to admire in those who are in my life, rather than looking up for role models from outside. And it's a weird thing, I know, in our niche and among entrepreneurs and successful people, it's not a common attitude. Of course, Vision has been to a great degree my mentor in a funny way. We've been married. For those who don't know me very well or don't know Vision, Vision is my ex-husband, and he's the founder of Mindvalley, and I was along the journey for a long time, but we divorced recently, a few years ago. We're still friends. So he was a mentor to me to a great degree, mostly because I came from a different universe. I came from Soviet background, and I was 14 when Soviet Union collapsed. So for me, the Western world was something to get to know.
Yeah.
For example, he pushed me to go to study in a university in Scotland. I studied in Edinburgh, and for him, it wasn't even a question. He was like, "Of course, apply and go." For me, it was like flying to the moon. I asked, "What do you mean apply? Like, who's going to talk to me?" Because I came from a completely different
Yeah.
world.
Yeah.
So he has been pushing me. Because of him, I ended up in business as well, because when I grew up, business people were criminals, because entrepreneurship in Soviet Union was criminally punished. So in a great degree, but I wasn't searching for him as a role model. I just happened to be married to him, and I learned from him. So that's about role models. But when it
Yeah.
comes to dictating my own rules,
Yeah.
if you can say dictating, or setting the boundaries, I guess I have to say great thanks to my parents for understanding. But I went into work life when I was 14.
Mm.
And my first job I got when I was still studying university. So I was covered. I didn't have any debts to pay, any mortgage or responsibilities. I didn't have family. I didn't have children. I mean, I had my parents. Um, so at that time, I wasn't afraid to say that that's my conditions. I want to work, I want to earn extra money, but I still value what I have. And the other half of my life is still, I
Yeah.
value it enough that I'm willing to give up that idea of earning extra money to keep what is important for me.
Yeah.
And because I set up like this, I always, it's like, when you set the train going, it will just keep going on those same rails.
Yeah.
So I never questioned if that was the right thing. I guess this desire to compromise or the fear of asking comes when you start being afraid of losing the job. And that was
Yes.
always something that I used to say, that I'm not afraid to lose my job. But
Yeah.
then again, I started when I didn't have responsibilities. I get it how people are afraid because they have a family to support and they have children to send to school and the apartment or the house to pay for. So I get that. The thing
Yeah.
is that it is hindering us from growing to a
Yes.
great degree, because we don't do things we might do because we are so scared of losing what we have.
Yeah.
And we have to remind ourselves over and over again, people in the West, not everywhere, but people in the West, especially in Europe, we have to remind ourselves that even if you risk everything and you lose everything, you're most likely not going to end up on the street.
Yeah.
So maybe we should have a bit more courage, because even the family is going to support you, and maybe you're afraid that your spouse will not understand how. What do you mean you're giving up your stable job for a dream?
Yeah.
But maybe we should ask. There are so many. When I was divorcing a very successful man, of course I'm still scared sometimes. How can I
Mm.
manage by myself? But I trusted that people will not. Some people shot me down, but others understood, and they
Yeah.
understood that certain values are important enough that practical and rational can be sacrificed for what is important to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And you touch upon a point that fear, and I've been thinking about fear a lot lately because you mentioned that in the Western world, we have this fear which is not rational because we will most likely, like you mentioned, we will most likely not end up on the street. We are most likely have some type of security system either by the government or by our families. I mean, there's so much we have, and even what we have, if we just strip down our income costs and the luxurious parts of our life, we're still going to be able to kind of run with it for a while. But fear many times is seen as a warning signal, and I want to talk a bit about this fear of overwhelm, fear of doing things that you don't know, fear of being always in that moment, in the edge of what you understand, in the edge of, can I really do this? I'm like, am I getting into a bit too much here? And that fear, many times we stop. When we get into that overwhelm, I'm feeling a bit dizzy. But I start to feel like that fear is actually a sign of growth. And
Mm.
that fear on the other side, that's where the magic happens. On the other side, that's when we talk about expanded vision in our company a lot, about expanding your reality by thinking bigger, thinking, not getting into the tunnel vision, but expanding. But many times I see people they stop here because they, I am afraid, so I'll stop here, because they're afraid of burnout, or they're afraid of something. And I do feel like if you strip down and you take away what you don't want, the burnout will not happen. If you just keep the best things and you go and you jump in, and then you take away what you don't longer need, because you cannot keep everything with you to the next stage of your life, then that's growth happens. So how do you feel about fear? Because for me, fear is becoming one of the most exciting parts of me, my own growth of like, and I want to play with fear. I want to dance with fear. How do you manage fear in your life?
Uh, well, I think fear is a very overarching term. In fact, there are so many different uh, facets to that emotion, or
Yeah.
so many different shades to that emotion. And there are types of fear which I welcome, and there are types of fear which I'd like to avoid.
Yes.
So, to what you're saying, Habecker, he's super smart person. He says that your success is equal to the size of your comfort zone. And obviously, when we're getting out of comfort zone, we are feeling a certain type of fear. And it may be just excitement. Excitement is also a type of fear, but with breath apparently. Or it
Mm.
may be, some kind of uh, maybe you're just tense and it's not fear per se, but you are concerned or not sure, or there are, as I said, there are so many different facets. The point is that if you are doing things which are not very comfortable, that's how you grow, and that's how you reach success. And that's exactly what Haveka was saying, that your success is equal to the size of your comfort zone, the size of your success. So the bigger your comfort zone, the wider your comfort zone, the more success you will achieve. And your comfort zone obviously grows when you do things which you're not comfortable with. So for me, every time I feel fear, whichever aspect of it, I just tell myself, okay, I'm investing into my success, to the point that
Oh,
I don't like dentists. Even when I go to the dentist, I tell myself, okay, I'm investing into my success. I
I
know it's
love
not
that.
right, but it makes me feel a little better.
Yes,
It's
yes.
not exactly what Harv was saying, but still it helps. So the thing with fear is that, first of all, it is often exaggerated. I like Mark Twain. He says, I had 100 problems in my life. I like the saying by Mark Twain. He said, I had 100 problems in my life and 99 never happened. So most of the time, fear lives in the future. We are worried about something which we do not know if it will happen or not, but we are worried about that. And that's
Mm.
where fear comes from. So usually when we get there, it's something else. We can't project ourselves into the future and take into account everything which is going to change, and you yourself is going to change when you're in the future. So we project ourselves into the future, let's say even a year from now, and we imagine it from our current circumstances, not taking into account that what is leading up to that future will change you and will change the circumstances, and what will happen there is going to be different from what we see, how we see it here. There is research that even shows that our reaction to negative events is very different from what we imagine it from the present moment when it happens
Mm.
into the future. So we have to understand that our projection of what is going to happen is usually mistaken,
Yeah.
and that um, and that doesn't say that the bad case scenario is not going to be painful. It
Yeah.
might, or it might not, and worrying about it right now is ridiculous. It's like what Mark Twain said: 99 of my 100 problems never even happened.
Yeah.
So I would suggest that acting despite fear, nevertheless. Of course, there are situations which are dangerous for your life, and I'm
Yeah.
not a huge fan of risking your life just for the sake of pushing your comfort zone.
Yeah.
Uh, but I can tell you, I've seen a lot of people, a lot of super successful people are just like everybody else. And if we think that you need something extra special to be successful, usually you just need to act. Usually you just need to step out of the
Yeah.
house and go onto that journey, and that will take you somewhere. Most of super successful people are not massively wise or massively educated. What makes them different from us is that they have the guts to do
Yeah.
the things that they think are important. That's the only thing that gets them to the success. Not some crazy education or smarts. That's not the case. A lot of very smart people are actually very average in their life achievements because they may be over calculating and
Yeah.
too smart to go into things. And just one thing, when we go into business, we sometimes think that it's going to take all our time and all our health, and we'll have to make choices. But that's not the case. We are forgetting that in business, risk taking pays. And we often think that it's the time that I'll put into business, it's the sacrifice that I'm willing to do for the sake of business that will bring me the benefit. But that's not true. Are you willing to take the risk? Risk pays in business. Time pays in employment. So
Yeah.
if you think that your success in business depends on how much time you're putting into that, then you're mistaken. You are
Yeah.
you're trying to get employed by your own undertaking. And yes, if you're willing to put 10, 12 hours into a business, good, but pay for that. This is, salary or hour, let's say certain dollars per hour. This is the realm of employment and salary, and you can go and work for a company if that's your equation. Business is risk taking, and if we
Yes.
remember that, then it is not, it doesn't equal time spent on it.
Yeah.
Of course, a lot of people, if they're passionate about their business, they spend a lot of time into that, but you don't burn out when you do something you're passionate about. And it's your choices. But if you're going into business to be successful, to achieve a goal, to solve a problem, then just remember that entrepreneurship means you're willing to take the lead, you're willing to take the risk, you're willing to find people who are going to help you, who are going to work with you. And it is not time, necessarily time and your health and sacrifices.
Yes. And I love that you mentioned it's, the idea of taking risks doesn't have to be time consuming, and being an entrepreneur doesn't have to be consuming. And the fear of actually going for one thing is many times stopping us from taking away all this noise that we don't need anymore. So if you look at, what you want to go for, you have the gut telling you this is the one thing I really feel. And then the logical mind and the fear comes in, and you're like, but what if that doesn't work? I can add this and this and this and this and this to my list. And then that's when you start to feel overwhelmed. But if you sit down with yourself and you actually listen, what is that fear I want to go for? That good fear that you mentioned, that taking that risk, which is calculated risk but still a risk, and going for it, and taking away everything else. That's where I see often that, if we just listen to that one thing that feels right, and just get rid of everything else. We don't need to answer all the emails. We don't need to do all these things. We don't need to read all the books and get this extra certificate, and just, go for that gut feeling. I love that so much. Do you do any practices? You mentioned that, you're saying I'm investing in myself when you go to the dentist or you're doing stuff. Is there any other way that you have seen been helping you to cultivate that courage?
So, as you were talking right now, I had this image which I wanted to share with you guys. So I did a training with Harvard and Enlightened Warrior Training Camp, and that was all about overcoming your fear. I did it a long time ago when I was still a little more carefree. So that helped, and since then I've been a rather courageous person. Maybe I was courageous before, I don't know, but I had this vision in my mind. You were saying that sometimes we get overwhelmed and our fear increases because we get the feeling of overwhelm.
Yeah.
I remember I was doing tightrope exercise once, and tightrope, of course, you understand logically that it's not scary, but when you are, let's say, 5 or 6 meters above the ground on a tightrope, and you've never walked on a tightrope, of course you have all the securities and you understand what you're doing. You kind of get scared just seeing where you are and what you're about to do.
Yeah.
And that's overwhelming. And I remember as we were doing the tightrope exercise once, the trainer said, who wants to try it blindfolded? And being an idiot as I am, I said, of course I want to try it blindfolded. So they blindfolded me, and I was climbing up the tree. And I suddenly realized that doing it blindfolded was 5 times easier than doing it with my open eyes. Because what happened is as I'm climbing up the tree, all I can feel is my body and the tree. And I don't see, am I high, am I low? I might be just half a meter above the ground. Or I might be 10 meters above the ground. It feels the same because all I'm focusing on is climbing up the tree. My hands, whatever I was using to climb up the tree. And then on the tightrope, it was the same. I wasn't scared because I couldn't see how high I was, how far I have to go. All I could focus on was my body and the ropes. And I needed to move in a certain direction, and it wasn't scary at all. You can experiment with that. If you're afraid of heights, you can ask your friend to take you down blindfolded somewhere, and then open your eyes. You will feel absolutely safe while your friend is holding your hand. The moment you open your eyes and you're looking down, let's say a cliff or whatever, hopefully it's a safe place where you have a railing. And suddenly you feel fear, and you understand that you feel fear because your picture is too complete. And maybe in our everyday life, we have to, it's good to see the complete, it's good to see a big picture, of course. It's good to see how far you're going, and it's good to have your goals set for the 10 years, 30 years, end of your life. It's good. But in the everyday life, don't stress about that. I knew my exercise. I could see it from the ground. I have to climb up the tree and cross the tightrope to the other side. That's my task. And now I'm blindfolding and climbing, and I'm not stressing about the big picture. Am I 40% there, or am I 60% there? It doesn't matter, as long as I'm
Yes.
enjoying the process of climbing. So I think with life, it's the same. We're sometimes overcomplicating matters. Yeah, because
Yes.
we have to understand that all those unpleasant feelings, they live in the future and in the past. Fear is in the future. We're worried about something that might happen, might not happen, might happen, and we might not even react to it this way.
Yeah.
We are upset about things that had happened, that we can't change anymore, rather than focusing on the moment, because that's the only time where things are happening, and that's the only time where you actually don't feel anything unpleasant. Because you can't be worried about about this moment. You know where you are. You're
Yeah.
alive, you're breathing, you're here. And
Yeah.
maybe the next moment something horrible is going to happen, but deal with that when you're there. As a practice, I don't have many practices. I just do things. When I say yes, I don't think about how I'm going to feel about that. And very often when I get there, I'm like, oh, why did I have to do that? And I know that I will feel this way. But
Yeah.
when I'm saying yes, I'm thinking of the benefit of doing certain things. When I said
Yes.
yes for the first time to speak at AFES stage, which was terribly scary, I knew it was good for me. It would move me in my direction, but I didn't focus on how scared I'm going to be when I'm there. Of
Yeah.
course, the week before the speech, I didn't eat. I was spending half of my day in the bathroom. I lost a kilo per day running up to that big event. But I had already committed, and there was no
Yes.
way out. That's
Yes.
that's how I deal with fear. But for a pleasant practice, I suggest you read the book Lord of the Rings. It's a super long book, but it is exactly like an entrepreneur's journey. The guy comes out of the house and there is no turning back. And he doesn't even know what's going to happen to him and who's going to help him and who's going to stop him. And you don't know. And you're walking with this journey. And that is, I know it's a fairy tale. And God, I can't pronounce this word in English. Allegorical story. But the truth is that that's how our life is. You don't know
Yeah.
where the dragon is. You don't know where this scary Mordor is. You don't know if you're even going there. And then when you're going there, you find out that you're making rounds there. because
Yes.
but it doesn't matter at the moment. At the moment, what matters is that you're stepping out of the house and you're embarking on that journey and you're
Yeah.
not turning back. And the beautiful
Yes.
thing about this book is that there is a battle, and then the next thing they're feasting and singing, and that's how life is. Yes, there are
Yes.
hard times, but you may be sure that after the hard times, you're going to have a moment to rest and to catch your breath and to step out again.
Yes, and celebrate. You mentioned the feast. Celebrate when you get to that point. Don't second guess and start asking you the question, will I keep it? Will it happen? Because that also happened, we are so good at getting into this fear zone of like, oh my God, what if something goes wrong? But what if something goes right? What if actually it's gonna work out? What if actually you're gonna be feeling so amazing on stage that that's the only thing that you ever wanted to do? I had the same feeling with going the first time on stage and like trembling and realizing that actually it wasn't that scary. It was amazing, and then and many things that we do, they're much more scary in our mind. And I love the blindfold metaphor. Well, with actual going up and climbing, I'm afraid of heights. I kind of like that idea of trying it. And paragliding, because we live next to the ocean. So paragliding and opening my eyes, that can be a very interesting experience. But I'm thinking, when you mention blindfold, what I think about here is calming your mind. And this is why I feel meditation and sitting with yourself and grounding yourself is almost a must if you want to be going to that risk. Because if you cannot hear your own voice, the decisions you will take will be based on fear, not on courage. And to
Mhm.
cultivate courage, you have to blindfold yourself and get
Yeah.
yourself out of that noise so you can hear yourself, and take away that attention. With social media can be sometimes, or emails coming in, there's all this noise, right? So I love that idea. And for the ones listening and watching, there are many ways that you can blindfold yourself to get into a state where you realize that in the present moment, actually everything is perfect. Everything is perfect. You're not in risk, you're not in fear, and it's amazing. I absolutely love talking to you, Kristina, about all this and the being bold and courageous and going for it. And there's so many great messages for the ones listening and watching, and also things that you can do right now. So I love that. If you listen to this and you're watching this, do make sure to go back and start activate this into your life. Play with it, implement it, have a go with it. Now, when you go out and you are going to take a risk, think, how can you say that you're investing in yourself right now? You're investing in entrepreneurship, because entrepreneurship it's a beautiful journey. It's I for me it's one of the most amazing journeys that I have the choice that I've taken to go on that journey. And I love that what we can do with it. So, but if we make it fun, if we make it bold, if we make it, we can live all emotions, we can live all experience, we can expand our vision, we can expand our life and our impact. But that requires us to go blindfolded and jump and enjoy the ride, enjoy that process of actually not knowing what the next step is. We have this vision, like you mentioned, the vision is so important, but we are walking blindfolded. We are walking blindfolded. We don't know what's going to be the next step, but everything is going to work out. Everything's going to be perfect if we keep walking. That's the most important lesson. Is there anything else that you would like to add for our listeners and our the ones watching this episode?
We were supposed to talk about authenticity. In reality, we were talked about courage, but it's okay. I don't mind. I actually know I can say something about it. And also, you mentioned your fear of heights. So I'll give you another analogy. My first jump with a parachute, and it's about courage and about not about blindfolding. Actually, it's a slightly different technique. I knew I had to do that because Vishen shared that he had done that, and I'm like, okay, he's going to push me out of the plane. I know it. So I'd better have the parachute on me.
Yes.
So when we set the time, I was so afraid I didn't even dare to plan anything beyond the jump. I knew statistically it's a safe sport, so I did a tandem jump. So statistically, it's safer than scuba diving, 15 times safer. People don't even realize. And we are okay with people scuba diving, but skydiving is 15 times safer. You're safer skydiving than driving to the drop zone. So I knew all of the statistics, but of course, I didn't dare to plan anything because I thought, of course, I'm going to die. I mean, jumping out of the plane, who wouldn't? So it was a scare. It was a paralyzing fear. And I remember the whole time as we were driving there, I was thinking, I can cancel. I was getting trained. I was like, okay, I'll do the training, but I don't have to go into the plane. So I get dressed. I was like, I can get dressed. I don't need to get into the plane. So I'm in the plane already with a parachute on me. And I'm thinking, maybe I can still land with a plane and step out of the plane like all normal people. So I'm standing there and my brain doesn't work. There is just 4,000 meters or 12,000 feet for Americans down there. I can't even see the land. And I'm paralyzed. It seems like that's the end of the world because I had not planned anything beyond that. It's just this emptiness and fear. And then they kick me out of the plane, obviously, like everybody. And in one step, I suddenly feel that I'm flying. I feel so exhilarated. It's like, oh my God, I can fly. So when the guy tells me you have to pull the chute, I'm like, no, I'm not ready. I want to fly. He's like, idiot, you have to pull the chute.
Were you alone? Did you have someone with you?
No, I had the guy.
Okay, yeah.
But that's the thing. It was safe. I knew it was safe. My brain knew it was safe, but my body rejected the idea that it was safe. What I'm trying to say is that the feeling, not the feeling, but between your paralyzing fear, where you feel that's the end of the world, and you feeling that you're flying and you actually can fly, it's just one step. So whether you're blindfolded, where somebody kicks you out of the plane by kicking your head, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The matter is to make this one step, just out of the door and make this one step. Don't even think, even if you're on autopilot, even if you're about to faint, just make this one step and you'll fly. And then the fear will change.
Yes. And then, yes. And it's so funny that you mentioned that you wanted to keep flying, like, no, just keep me this way. And I'm feeling that this whole episode is gonna reconvert me into going for heights and blindfold and jump from planes, which I completely love, because it's such a great metaphor for entrepreneurship. It's absolutely is, one step at a time. Just keep going, and then you might realize that actually you enjoy flying. You actually enjoy that state. It's a state that we need to visit, and we can start to call it our home. We can start to call it, this is actually the natural state. I don't need to live in fear. I don't need to worry. I can live in a state of bliss. I can live in a state of trust that things are going to work out in my favor. So it's absolutely wonderful. And yes, we did not touch so much on authenticity, but I do feel that we touched on it in our conversation. And there are many lessons that are taken away from this. And I think fear is one of the most important
Can I
elements.
share
Yeah,
something else? Because it suddenly came to my mind. This
absolutely.
metaphor with the plane, I actually came to that when I had this experience in my business life. I had a business partner, and I had a feeling that it was not working out, and it took me years before I got the courage to split up with her,
Yeah,
because I was scared. I was scared of a conflict, of sharing the business, of it's not an easy thing sometimes. So
yeah,
we have those decisions in our life, and we are afraid of them, and we think that it is so scary. So how I came to the metaphor of me jumping out of the plane. I mean, I actually jumped out of the plane was because it took me 3 years to make a decision to separate from my business partner. And I was literally doing it almost on autopilot. It's like, I have to do it. I forced myself to say, let's split up.
yeah,
And I was so scared. But the thing is that the moment I sent out that message and I said, I think we should separate, I suddenly felt like flying. So the thing with fear is that often we are not afraid of the change and the decision per se. We're afraid that we have to face that choice and to make the decision. So what
mm,
makes it scary is the fact that I have to make this decision. So I'm going to push it off. I'm going to be afraid of that. But the
yeah,
moment you know, the moment you even know the worst scenario, the moment that you know that you have to declare bankruptcy, suddenly life becomes easy and you feel like you're flying and you find extra energy to move on, because
yes,
nothing in business, in life, is the end of the world except death itself. So
yes,
if you have to break up with the business partner, if you have to declare bankruptcy, if you have to close down a project, it's the moment you make this decision, the decision that you're putting off, that you're so scared of, you suddenly realize that fear was about that choice, not about the scenario of what's going to unfold afterwards. You're
yeah,
going to be okay, most likely. And more than likely, you're going to actually feel relief, because you will take out the energy out of the indecision, out of the desire not to make this decision, and you will free up that energy, and you'll most likely going to feel that you have wings, even if you are scared.
yes. And being in that state, naturally, the way you're going to show up, in your interviews with your clients, with your team, in partnerships, it's going to empower others. It's going to create a ripple effect of courage. Because if we lead by fear, we are also leading our team into thinking fear-based. And if we have clients, if many of our listeners are, they're coaches, consultants, so they have clients to work with. But if they are living in fear, how are they showing up in their coaching, in the advice they're giving to their clients, in the advice they're giving to their team, in the advice they're giving to their partners? If we live in fear, then all our interactions are going to have a fear element. If we try, and I mean, it's always a question of choice and trying. We all get into fear, but if we try to live in courage, if we try to live in trust that it's going to work out, then our interactions and our decisions and our people are gonna feel that. And I think that that's what's so powerful about Mindvalley, that your teams, the employees and all the people involved in the community, there's a courage around Mindvalley, and there is a courage as going for and taking risks and trying new grounds and exploring and see what's possible. And that is not only inspiring the team, it's not inspiring the client, but inspiring the whole community, the online community, the offline community. And I think it's a state that doesn't only impact us, it impacts everybody who gets the chance to be around us. So yeah, Absolutely. I love this conversation. Where can people find more about you, Kristina? Where can people explore your world and learn more about courage and living on their own terms and authenticity and all the beautiful work that you're doing?
Thank you. So obviously you can find me in Mindvalley, but I'm just a co-founder and one of the authors, so there will be other people there as well, but once in a while you'll see me there. Unless you speak Russian, then you'll see a lot of me. And alternatively, of course, I have my Instagram, Kristina Mänd, but Kristina is written with a K. And you just can find me on Instagram, and that's where I share my everyday life philosophy.
Wonderful. We're going to share all the links below so you guys can discover her world, and please do connect with her and share what you took away from this conversation. Tag Kristina so that she knows that you are taking action, you're acting just the small step every day. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for being here with us today. And thank you, Kristina, for being on the show.